All right, so guys, we are live. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Dr. Himanshu from Legit Quest, and with me, we have a guest today joining us for this legal lens, who's Aman Chirimar. I'll surely give you a chance, Aman, very soon. But for the diverse audience that we have, what I'll do is I'll take a leverage and sort of take another 2 to 3 minutes to just set the context. Maybe that would be advantageous for the people joining us live today. So, guys, thank you so much for joining. Like I just mentioned. So, what we're gonna do is definitely, people who are joining in for the first time. Though this is our second episode, but Magic Quest might be a new, sort of term for you. You know what you guys do and why this legal lens and all those things. So just to tell you, Magic Quest has been a legal tech venture. We are backed by Bridge and Waterbridge, and we are into this legal tech space primarily into three space within that legal tech. We are into legal research, so a lot of judiciary, law firms, and, law enforcement agencies, and law schools as well. We take research database as our product. Then we have another product which is into case management tool, wherein law firms and in-house counsels, the corporates they use to manage all their cases under one roof, one platform. And it's not just about just managing the cases and getting a real-time notification. So a full-fledged collaborative tool. And the third thing that we are into is legal due diligence. So we have a product called Level, very similar to what people have been hearing about civil. It's a credit score. So we are getting into a legal score because we possess the largest litigation tools of the country, and that's where we are leveraging and helping, sort of BGV firms, bankers, merchant banks, law firms who want to do the litigation check on various subjects and everything. So yeah, so that's what we are into. And I'll tell you the story behind this legal lens as well. I mean, I think it would interest you, like why this legal lens, because this space is booming right now. We've just got into 2025 and started hearing about legal tech. This is the space. Legal has been the space. Probably have not got much of the technology intervention till now, even though we have seen the rest of the technologies, AI, ML, Gen AI today, chat GPT, everyone is talking about that. But yes, this is a space which is a little unstructured, and sort of many moving ventures like us sort of trying to revolutionize. So that's where we thought, like, why don't we become the thought leader and at least spark some debate, spark some sort of initiative where industry folks like you come here with us, talk about what is happening in this area, how things are happening, and real life insights, challenges, and everything. So that maybe upcoming generation who want to probably get into this finance and a legal or a compliance and a risk space, I mean, they get a valuable insight. So that's where we thought of getting into legal lens. And today it's our second episode. We had a very successful first episode as well. So anyhow, moving to you, we take another sort of leverage of formally introducing you, right? So guys, just letting you know about Aman. He's been a champion from an investment banking zone. He's been right now vice president with Handicap Advisors, and as a this handicap advisor is investment bank focused on M&A and privately equity transactions in India's mid market. Aman brings a unique blend of go-to man battlefield experience from executing post-merger integration and growth strategy at a specialty chemical firm to navigating legal and structural complexity at JP Morgan, which is one of the big name in the sector, and even building from scratch as a founder. So glad to know that you've been into a founder shoe as well, Aman. And definitely he brings a sharp lens to how legal strategy shapes successful exits and investing. So I'm very much assured, Aman, that we have the right person today to speak on the right one. So I'll formally welcome you. And maybe if you want to add anything
Yeah.
about
Firstly, I thank you, Himanshu. Yeah, so thank you, Himanshu, for the quick introduction. I really like the strides you're making as a legal tech firm. In the world of AI and sort of where technology can be leveraged to sort of improve these processes of what corporate lawyers or civil lawyers currently do. It's definitely a phenomenal white space which you're working on. I'm pretty excited to see what comes ahead for Legit Quest as well. And lovely, thanks for the introduction as well on my background. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm pretty excited to talk about what exactly are the real world situations and how we can leverage these legal tech firms or legal moves which actually affect your mergers and acquisitions on a day-to-day basis.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pleasure to have you here, Aman. Aman, I think, before getting into this, the whole merger, acquisition, diligence kind of a thing. I mean, I would especially ask you, like, probably you can run us through with your whole background, maybe the
Yeah,
journey that you have taken till now, because the experience also is somewhere very important from where you started your journey, how
yeah.
you saw the world of M&A, how did you get into it? Maybe that would be really valuable for the audience. So why don't we just start from there?
Yeah, actually, Himanshu, so you actually touched upon it, right, when you were introducing me. So I just stumbled onto an M&A. Like, that's how deals happen. Like, it's out of curiosity. It's out of sort of questioning why now or why this or how you're going to go for this. So I started this, got into this field because of curiosity when I started with JP Morgan initially. So over there, that was a large bank, proper systems, processes in place where I got exposure to sort of structured deals, blue chip deal making, have a proper army of legal folks, of diligence folks who were working with us as investment bankers to sort of create deals. But things got interesting when I took the other move to the specialty chemicals firm, where I was on the other side of the table. And shockingly, at that time when I was working over there, this entire specialty chemicals firm was being acquired by a larger company. And so that just put me into the the focal point of things where M&A, earlier where I was advising companies on how to do M&As, how to structure the transactions, what could be the synergistic outcomes out of it. And then secondly, then I've moved completely away from the advising part of things to being in the focal point of it, where actually I am discussing with the buyer what the kind of synergies or revenue or cost synergies would be for our company if you do acquire, right? And then work with legal teams, sort of build antitrust filings for Competition Commission of India, then also understand the post merger integration, like what happens after an M&A as well. So I got that perspective, I got that purview. So that was a pretty interesting experience which I think shaped me into being sort of a banker which has both an advisor and an operator experience, and that's what pushed me towards moving to a mid-market segment. So that's why I joined Endcap Advisors as the vice president for mergers and acquisitions and private equity, because I sort of thought of combining the big bank experience with the operator experience and bringing it to the MSME market in India, because that is one of the biggest markets, right? That's the foundation of India, India's
Absolutely.
GDP, and it's where the deal flow happens. So, and people, there is a big knowledge gap in this particular industry in the mid markets. So I thought, creating that awareness, making sure that people are aware, there are situations where you can sell your company, you can partner with some other big muscle to, sort of grow your entire corpus, or, even partially exit through an IPO route, through a strategic sale, cash out on your all your hard work, since your forefathers have done that in your company, like, the dhanda sort of a way. So there is options for that. So educating that and, penetrating into this market in the mid market is what excited me, and that's when I joined this.
Right, right, right. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I was not getting into this earlier. Like, we're not into M&A much. But yeah, when you said, sort of mid market, I think yes, the awareness is something that is very important. People are not
Right.
aware. Like, they can really inorganically they can
Yeah.
take advantage of those kind of a partnership and take the business to the next level. I think that's where your IndyCap advisors are playing a major role, and which is maybe a gap in the market as well, because people are
Yeah.
focusing on big ticket size
Exactly.
transactions. Perfect, perfect,
Exactly,
perfect.
Marshu. So actually, I had a point here. So now, generation is also changing. So folks from
Uh,
the millennials, Gen Zs, they understand value creation, they understand valuations. So now what they look at is more of, meeting investment banks, trying to offload their family-owned businesses, maybe create joint
Uh,
ventures, or reap some benefit out of the hard-earned, you know, years of work which their forefathers or
correct.
ancestors have done. So things are changing, but there's a big gap of a vendor still.
Absolutely. And they're more open to changes as well, because the new
Yeah,
generation that you're talking about, they are flexible and easy to convince, like, absolutely right.
for
So
sure.
maybe, maybe taking the conversation forward, Aman, like, obviously you talked about, different dimensions from where you, as an
Hmm.
operator, as a party, as well as an advisor, you have played into this M&A role. So why don't you, like, sort of apprise our audience as to how this whole, process happens? What is the step by step, process from a deal start to the deal closure? Maybe that could be a very a good element for people to learn from you, like how does it
Fair
happen.
enough. Yeah, fair enough. So actually, as I said earlier, curiosity is something which is very important for any deal to take place. Now, what
Okay.
happens when a founder is curious? Like, if a promoter questions himself or herself on how they want to grow further. Do they want to bring, additional capital to bolster their growth? Do they want to bring another partner to make sure that they can get the strategic muscle, or do they want to cash out from their current company partially or fully, whatever the choice
Hmm.
is? So the question then becomes like, why now? Why do you want to do that? Like the why is a very big factor in the start of an M&A process. So if a promoter does not have that why clear, an investment banker will also not be able to sort of pitch that company to a different, or position that company to a different strategic buyer or a financial buyer to go ahead with it. So getting that why clear is like the foundational principle of starting an M&A. So that will give you a narrative, a storytelling sort of a picture, right? Like it's like you have to understand the reasons or the principles behind doing an action. If you do not have that, then the actions won't take place. It won't like sort of come to fruition. So that is the starting point. Now after that is clear, right, then as investment bankers we have a long drawn process. We start with teasers, information memorandums, sign NDAs with potential buyers, sort of scour the market and understand where could this company fit. For example, if I'm working at a specialty chemicals company which are making organic pigments, right, which I was where I was working earlier. Now we need to understand what kind of synergies this company could have with another player. So whether it is
Right.
a revenue synergy, cost synergy, whether it would be an horizontal expansion or a vertical integration. So all of these have to be sort of understood at the very beginning, and that's how you find the potential buyers in the first place. So then you do the narrative, the storytelling on pitching on how the company actually looks. Information memorandum, what I mentioned, it's a document, like a 60, 70 pager document. But it's not just a fact sheet. It's not just the company's data dump. Rather, it
Hmm.
is a beautifully painted picture giving the company the best light possible to make sure that the other party is looking at it from a a positive sense of things. So
Yeah.
that is the second step. So outreach, then we sort of do, then create, then comes legal. Then if there are buyers who are interested, that's where your firms, your legal tech tools, or even like other corporate lawyers come into picture, where they sort of draft, memorandum of understanding, MOUs, or term sheets, or even like non-binding agreements at this stage. So they at this particular stage is where the offer comes onto the table. Like today, for example, if I'm selling out a company, the legal with the particular potential buyer, they will place a non-binding offer, right? Like I'm
Right.
going to acquire your company for this much amount, or this is the valuation range which I am thinking of. But it is again non-binding. It's not binding on the particular buyer to submit that document. That means he has to buy it or she has to buy it. That's not the case. So what happens after that is another long-term process where we try to loop in a lot of other folks from legal, from tax, from commercial, from financial. So all of these big fours or different smaller boutique firms as well will help us with legal due diligence, tax due diligence, commercial due diligence, and sort of uncover gaps what the promoters might have had or might have in the future. Like evaluate the transaction from a very thorough perspective. It's not like using a sledgehammer. You have to actually use a scalpel and sort of operate and see what's happening behind the doors. So that is
Right.
another process which will maybe take a month or two depending on the deal size. And then we come on to sort of term sheets and definitive agreements. And that's not just the case, right? Like when you're doing this, when you create these term sheets, right? For example, recently, like rather last week itself, I was in a room full of lawyers, tax due diligence folks, and what happened in that room was initially an MOU was shared by the legal team of the sell side advisors. And now the legal team just red flagged the entire MOU which the buyer had sent without having any commercial nuance. Legally, they were right, but they did not have the background or alignment on what exactly was the commercial agreements with the buyer, and that sort of derailed the entire process by 2 weeks. And that is what we were trying to solve the last week in the boardroom, because after sort of forming a term sheet, also alignment and trust between both the buyers and the sellers is super important. So
Yeah.
it's closure is not just closing the deal by signing a term sheet. There are conditions precedent which you have to sort of also look into before you can complete the transaction. There is a time frame, like once you sign a particular non-binding offer or a binding offer, there's still a time period where the due diligence is taking place. There's still a time period where the merger will close after all the
Mm.
due diligence and all of that is approved. So it's like it's like a shepherd. You are an investment banker, as a shepherd, taking all the cattle together to make sure that they escape the landmines and we come to the common goal which we have set out in the first place.
Oh no, interesting, interesting. I think, I mean, your last 5 minutes, I think you have just run through with every single element that is so important. And I think you're right when you said why. I mean, it's very important for initiating the transaction, the kind of value add that it's gonna bring to the parties. That
Right.
has to be very much clear. That why the hell I'm getting into this whole process, and and then
Exactly.
rightly said, the litigation part of it is very very important, because it's a due diligence. I mean, there is a financial, operational, whatever, but legal due diligence is something that has been always a challenging aspect. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely right. So like in the last, I'm just taking a cue from your the last line that you mentioned. I liked it, like like a shepherd, you are taking all the people along, right? So what sort of parties are involved in these whole transactions, and how you guys make sure, or maybe there's a collaborative effort happening, uh, other people, how everything comes and align together to make the deal as a successful deal happening in the market. Like, how does it happen, that alignment in particularly? Like, what are the efforts required from your side, maybe, that you can throw it much better to us?
So, so at the onset, one statement, it's not a one-man job. It's not a one-team job. It's not a one-company job. So it is like managing an orchestra. You have different players playing different instruments. There is a legal side of things who are looking at the risk tunes of the orchestra. There's investment bankers who are looking at valuations, narratives, synergies, sort of aligning or running the orchestra. And then there is maybe there are investors, obviously investors who are looking at the structuring or the ROI, what the orchestra show might actually generate as a revenue. So it's more about coordination. So there are multiple stakeholders in this particular sort of scenario. uh, I told you about the legal teams. There's investors, there's promoters, obviously, there's investment bankers, there are due diligence professionals, be it commercial, operational, financial, and then also there are tax lawyers who will help you transaction make the structure so tax neutral or tax beneficial that it does not hurt either of the parties whenever whoever's receiving the cash consideration or what or kind of equity or whatever the case may be. So this is where investment bankers play a major role. Now, if you understand, there are sort of 8 cooks in the kitchen. You have to manage all those 8 cooks to come out with only one dish. That one dish is to close that M&A deal or a private equity
Right.
deal, right? Whatever the case may be, in that case, that you have to make sure that the tuning of all these 8 people is completely aligned. So it's like everyone knows how much of what is going to go in that particular dish, and they are expert in their own fields. So that expert alignment is very important, obviously, because if that alignment is not there, right, which I mentioned, like a legal team just gave you a red line MOU which was sent to the buyer's council earlier. It was because they were not commercially aligned with us or with some other bankers, right? But that is why alignment of these entire stakeholders, all the stakeholders of 8 to 9 people is very important. And that I just have one simple thing. When I used to work in bulge bracket firms, or how I've seen other bankers work on this, there's a lot of time gap. There's a lot of communication gap. There are days and days you spend on Excels, which you share across boards, and people still just keep updating. Whatever their sort of action point is on a a weekly or a daily basis, depending on this case. But what happens faster in mid market, right? You can sort of create a WhatsApp group, for example, and you can discuss all the stakeholders, take everyone into confidence and discuss in a very transparent and a clear manner, which just gives you that tempo, that speed to action, right? And that's where majority of the deals sort of get derailed. If it's not speedy enough, then it just costs a lot of time and money. So that sort of a thing, is very important from a banker's perspective, like making speed to action, being transparent, and keeping this set tempo for the nice rhythm by the orchestra.
No, I got that. I think you're absolutely right when you said it's everyone's effort which helps you make the deal perfect. So just going a little back, you talked about not many things happened during the transaction, and one important aspect we talked about was the diligence, right? The due diligence that happens. So just wanting to understand from your side, like while doing a merger or acquisition kind of a transaction, while doing those due diligences, what sort of challenges you guys face, the red flags that you guys get, and how do you sort of come out of those problems, challenges, or what sort of solutions that you avail, which are available in the market, maybe that can help the audience know like how to tackle such situation in this space.
So, Himanshu, like in legal due diligence, or for example, any sort of due diligence, the first and foremost challenge as a mid market banker we face is that the things or the house is not in order. So, the promoter himself or herself doesn't know what's in the closet. A lot of times, what happens in these mid market firms, right? Like maybe the promoter's nephew is the CFO, and maybe he has one particular CA or a financial controller who is doing all the compliances, who is doing all the financial accounting, who is managing all the the day-to-day cash books of the company as well. Now they don't have sort of heavy or bulky strategy or compliance teams in place like larger companies do, who look into all the documentation, data storage, and maintaining a proper record of all of it. So legal or any sort of due diligence in this phase is more, it's very bloated. There are, like, we receive contracts scanned on WhatsApp. There are multiple buttloads of PDFs which come to our desk, which we have to go through using a scalpel and a very eye to detail thing. So, and even after that, there are things which are still left out because A, it was not properly recorded, which I mentioned before, and B, the promoter is not even aware of it. So that hand holding in mid market is super important. That's where we come as investment bankers, try to groom these promoters from day one itself. Try to make them understand, get the house ready first before we invite others to purchase it. Right? You will first want to beautifully paint the house, put, like, highlight the views, maybe even bake cookies for the particular prospective buyer. So unless you do that and get your documents and all of your sort of lists in check, it's not possible, to sort of conduct these due diligences. But now what happens once we've gotten all of this? The entire DD also sort of uncovers a lot of risks, lot of liabilities. Right?
Right.
Like there in all these mid market firms or even large cap firms, right? Once you start your due diligence, you'll uncover innumerable sort of pending litigations on the
Yeah.
company. Maybe there are certain clauses or certain phases in certain companies where the IPs are disputed. The entire product of the company is disputed. Someone else is claiming the IP on it, and all of these sort of break down the entire transaction in the first place. That is what, like,
Right.
these due diligence exercises uncover for us at a very early stage. No,
Right.
the purpose of this DD is not to sort of break down the transaction. Our end goal is to make the transaction happen, right? Everyone's end goal is to get to that common goal because both the parties will be mutually benefited out of it. So these
Right.
DDs, these due diligence, sort of are like an MRI scan. They give you the issues very early on before it sort of exacerbates a lot.
Uh,
So that is why
right.
it's super important to get this done, like, due diligence to be done by professionals, by experienced folks, but at the very early on stage, and not wait, till the term sheet or maybe till the binding agreements have been filed. Because a lot of mergers then, fail because of that, if it's too late.
No, no. I think Aman, the interesting part for me was like the kind of analogy that you create, right? Even before starting, when you want to sell your house and you have to make your house ready to get sold, right? And I think that's something that I think our audience will also understand. Like, if you're really wanting to get into a partnership, you have to make sure that you're ready for that kind of a merger acquisition,
Exactly.
that kind of a very rightly mentioned. And probably this is what is very important in the mid market that you've been focusing on.
Yeah.
Maybe the big companies who are already in processes, who are already very streamlined, they need not to probably do that. But I think in your space, I think this is
Needs a
somewhere
fresh start.
it has to start off. And very rightly said, you get a shocker maybe when you really start with the due diligence on all those things. So just a sort of counter question or a follow on question on that. Like, there are a lot of litigations that you may come across with on the part where the IP you talked about, the whole IP was under infringement or something like that. So how do you guys tackle, like you mentioned, like, because the idea is very clear to get the deal
Yeah.
happen, right? So
Yeah.
what sort of solutions you take at that point in time if those kind of red flags they come up,
Yeah.
and there is a
So that's
possibility to change to a green flag maybe. So how you guys do it?
Yes, that is the entire point, yeah, Himanshu. Thanks for bringing that up, because the part of due diligence is not just to give you red flags, but to rather give you solutions on how to come out of it. Because as you mentioned, it's one common goal. So in this
Right.
particular, if we have certain red flags which come up, we have a very transparent structure in place which we try to follow a process where we first try to understand the root cause of the problem, right? We speak to the promoter, we get all the stakeholders on board to understand transparently like why this issue stemmed and how this stemmed. Then we move on to the expert opinions from the legal counsel, because they are the expert masters in these particular sectors. They will look into the particular sort of the problem and give us a solution which might be feasible for both the parties. So over here, no one's sitting there with a knife in their hands to cut ties if something comes up. They want to make this happen. Even the legal firm, even the legal teams across both parties, even be the seller, be the buyer, both councils understand that this potential merger or a deal is happening for a particular benefit. So they then themselves come up with a sort of proper channels or risk mitigation ideas which can actually eliminate or at least reduce the risk. And if that is not possible, all of this is very disclosed
Right.
to the particular other party pre-hand, so that transparency and that trust is still maintained with them. So if that transparency and trust is maintained, obviously there might be situations of haircuts on valuations. There might be situations where the buyers come down from a 300 cr valuation to a 200 cr because of a disputed IP claim. But at least when that trust factor is maintained, which is the most important factor when you're connecting two different parties, that is where good things happen. That's where the buyer also tries, even the seller also tries together collectively to resolve that issue. So it's not like an issue has been flagged, you just throw it out of the room and you just call it a day. That's not the case. People work together. If you flag that issue, you're transparent about that issue, you're making sure that there's no communication gap. So, and then you work together to sort of resolve it through expert matters, expert subject matter experts, and all of it. So that is the entire the solution, the way we go about this thing is.
No, no, I think I got that very clearly. It's about finding the solutions, and obviously those solutions will be dependent on what kind of a red flag that has come into play, and
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. So I think you're right
So
that way.
sometimes it's not
So
possible also. Sorry to cut you
right,
off, like
right, right.
sometimes it's not possible to identify or solve that red flag. If the Sony and Z merger, which was taking place in India, one of the biggest media tech giants were merging for a $10 billion deal. There was a big red
Right.
flag on the succession planning. On There was probes from SEBI, RBI, NCLT, and all of that led to the destruction of the merger. So sometimes even red flags are not solvable per se. So that's something which
Right.
you have to take it as a risk factor.
No, no, I understand. But I think that's also important to, get on to knowing those red flags. And that's where probably we are there to bring upon those red flags in those kind of a deals, because
Yeah.
I remember many IPOs that we has been happening in the last couple of months. We were doing all the litigation check for the stakeholders involved, and then
Oh,
that's where those red flags on the promoters, directors, and related parties they bring upon, and that's where you then after that comes into play, trying to sort out how to reduce that kind of a risk. So yeah, we are the ones who put red flag, and probably you are the ones who try to solve like what kind of a solution to provide to fight for those red
exactly.
flags. So got that. So maybe I can take a leverage of asking one more question. Aman, I do understand there's a time paucity with you, but I just one sort of question, like because we were talking about that those alignment between the stakeholders involved in the whole deal. Any sort of advice maybe, or a suggestion that you as an investment banker can give to other stakeholders, maybe a law firm, or maybe the parties, or any stakeholder. I mean, there are multiple stakeholders,
Yeah.
8 to 9 that you talked about. So any suggestions or any sort of advice to these folks that you can share as a as a merchant banker, because you're sort
Yeah.
of representing merchant banker here. So what would be those advices that can really help these folks
So
maybe?
actually, just one thing which just strikes my mind as the most important, and as I have been harping about over this call, right? Transparency. Being transparent and keeping clear communication lines with all the stakeholders from the very early on is super important. That is the most important thing. If all the stakeholders, everyone is still aligned on the goal, they know, okay, if a company's go for an IPO, we need to get that IPO out there, get the DRHP approved, file the RHP, get it subscribed, get the listing gains as well if possible. But everyone knows that. But to keep it at the bottom level, when we start, even evaluating a company, and there are red flags which are issued by maybe legal teams, there might be red flags issued by tax diligence teams. That's maintaining that transparency and clear communication lines from the very early days, like even say from day 30 of starting to value that company is super important. So there is, everyone should be aligned particularly and also be transparent to make sure the things go smoothly.
No. I think you have hit exactly the bullseye. Maybe I think when you say transparency, I think if everyone who's involved in the transaction are playing their role to the best, who've been transparent to the other folks, who are,
Yeah,
it's all about again collaborative effort that we've been talking about. I think then it really helps the party to leverage from those kind of deals, and
exactly.
make money, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah, I absolutely agree to that. So I think with this, Aman, I would really sort of like to thank you. I think the last half an hour was amazing for me. I don't know, because it was a sort of very learning experience for me as well. Because mid market is a very a different domain which I got price of today. That there's a lot of different challenges, a lot of different strategies to tackle those kind of a deal. The parties are obviously it starts not just exactly by finding the buyer. It starts with them being convinced, like as to why it is helpful for them.
yeah,
So all those
exactly.
insights were really, really helpful, and probably the suggestion in the end that you gave, like transparency is the bottom line. If everyone follows that, it's gonna be a win-win situation for everyone in the deal. So thank you so much, Aman, for taking out time, sharing all these insights to our audience. I'm pretty sure that probably you would also have loved the conversation,
Yeah.
knowing about legit test maybe. So any last few words? Otherwise, we can wrap it up
No,
for day.
thank you so much, Himanshu, for inviting me to this platform, to speak about M&A. And especially, I try to focus more on the mid market because that's where we are at and that's where the challenges actually arise. So it was pretty interesting to also know about Legit Quest's strides. Looking forward to staying in touch with you to understand your products better if it can help us in our legal due diligence, which takes 40 days. Maybe we can reduce it to 5 days.
Absolutely, we have API solution. Just click it and you get the litigation check in 1 second. So
Yeah.
so that's where the technology. happen now.
Yeah,
It takes seconds to get to a solution, forget about
exactly.
days. But yeah, there are detailed, sort of transactions, high stake transactions where we also, it's not just AI, there has to be certain manual intervention. So there are
For sure.
detailed reports that also comes into. It's not just, AI is definitely going to help us for sure in building those technology, but there has to be an, sort of manual intervention that we focus on.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
It's not like AI will replace the lawyers. It's like AI plus
No.
lawyer will give you the value.
Yes, yes, yes. It's all about how we are, sort of adjusting to the new things, new technology, customizing us and learning new things. So yeah, I think with this, probably, Aman, I can really thank you again. So we can, wrap this session and
Sure.
hope to see you soon again. So yeah, thank
Yeah.
you so much, guys. Thank you so
So
much for
much.
joining in. Wait for the next episode. We'll be, live soon again next month for sure. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you so much.